gingerbread, and now we are going to make the royal icing that's used not only to decorate with, but we're actually going to use this as glue to hold our gingerbread house together. And the secret to this royal icing is making sure that it's super stiff. You do not want it runny. Remember how we did when we made the icing for the sugar cookies? We made that kind of thinner so that you could flood an area. Well, we don't want this icing to be that thick or that thin. We want it to be thicker so that it holds its shape and it holds all of this together. The cookie icing, when we left it alone, it kind of it went down to a flat surface. We don't want a flat surface. We want this to hold its shape. So we're going to make this icing pretty stiff with this one. And for this icing, I'm going to be, the last time you saw me make royal icing, I used a kit, a royal icing kit, that everything was already in there together. But this time I'm going to be using meringue powder, and this is Wilton meringue powder. I got this at Michael's. You can order it online. Sometimes you can find it at Walmart, but I haven't been able to find it at Walmart lately, so I had to go to Michael's to get this one. There are also recipes online for how to make meringue powder. If you live somewhere where you can't get this, you can do this with egg whites. You use pasteurized egg whites, and that's actually the traditional way of making it, is with the egg whites. And so I will include a link in the classroom for that recipe for how to make it with egg whites. Okay, so our recipe for this royal icing using meringue powder is 2.5 tablespoons of meringue powder, and I'm going to make a double recipe. I'm going to make 2 times of this recipe because I want to have lots of icing to do to whatever I want to do on my gingerbread tree. So I'm going to make 2 recipes, so that means I need 5 tablespoons of meringue powder. Okay, so all right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, 5 tablespoons of meringue powder, and then we're going to add into that one 3 tablespoons of water. Okay, and let me get a little bit of water. Here's my bottle. I had a bottle of water somewhere. All right, 3 tablespoons of water. 1. That is a teaspoon, not a tablespoon. Oops, that would have been a big problem. This is a teaspoon, not a table. I looked at that and thought, well, that's kind of small. Anyway, so I just put in 5 teaspoons. I need 5 tablespoons, which is because there's 3 teaspoons in every tablespoon. I need now 15 teaspoons of this. I've already put in 5. I got to put in 10 more. Okay, help me count here. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. That's much better. Okay. Now I need 3 tablespoons of water. So I put in 1 teaspoon. Wonder where my tablespoon measuring spoon is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so that's 3 tablespoons of water. Let me adjust this so you can actually see my mixer. Okay, so I've got 3 tablespoons of water, and I just want to mix this together until it gets kind of frothy. And you definitely want to use, you don't want to use the whisk, you want to use the paddle. I have a paddle that's got little spatulas on the side, and so it rubs the side for me and cleans the side. If you don't have that, you want to use just a spatula and let it mix for a little bit, stop, clean off the sides and down to the bottom, and then do that again. All right, so let me mix this together. And I want to get this to where it's nice and frothy and smooth. You don't want any lumps in your meringue powder, okay? Or in any of this royal icing. If you get lumps, they're going to clog up your piping bag, and they make it really difficult to do anything with that, okay? Let me move this a little bit so you can see in there. See how it's kind of, that's kind of hard to see. All right, so it's starting to get frothy, okay? You can see in there, it's starting to get frothy, just a few little bubbles in it, okay? All right, now we're going to add 1 3/4 cup of sugar. And now I'm doubling the recipe, so that is 3.5 cups of sugar. Did you know there was so much math in baking? Because you've got to figure out all of your fractions, and sometimes, well, I just did that in the wrong place. And sometimes you want to double things, so you got to learn how to double fractions really easily. So this calls for 1 3/4 cup of powdered sugar, but we want to double that. So I double the 1 cup, and I get 2 cups, and then I double the 3/4 cup. So 3/4 plus 3/4 is 6/4 or 1.5 cups. So that's 2 cups plus 1.5 cups. I need 3.5 cups of powdered sugar. Now, this is an important part. You must sift your powdered sugar. Okay? You have to sift the powdered sugar, or do you see how lumpy that powdered sugar is? And again, if you get those lumps into your icing, you're going to end up with lumps in your piping bag, and they will clog up the tip of your piping bag and make it really, really difficult to ice it. So we're going to sift this to make sure we've got no lumps in our powdered sugar. Okay? And we need 3.5 cups total of powdered sugar. And this is a 1/2 cup measuring cup, so let's see. There's 1 cup. This is going to be about half of a bag. So if you got the big bag of powdered sugar, it's a 1 pound bag of powdered sugar. It's going to be about half of the bag. That has usually about 8 cups of powdered sugar in it. And we need 3.5 cups. Okay. All right. All right, I put in 1 cup of powdered sugar so far. There's 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, and this is just about right. I think I got it pretty close here. Okay. By the way, just expect you're going to get powdered sugar everywhere when you do this. I had this counter clean. I did. I promise it was clean. All right, there's 3.5 cups. And let me put this extra powdered sugar back in my bag. And be sure and seal this up. You can put it in a Ziploc bag, or if you've got a container for it or something, you just want to seal up your powdered sugar. Okay. All right. Now we're going to mix up the icing, and we're going to let it mix for several minutes until it's nice and smooth and fluffy, and you want it to be at that stiff peak form. If you remember back to our first week, we learned about stiff peak, where it holds its shape, and you want it nice and thick. Okay, now not so thick that it's crumbly, but you want it nice and thick so it holds its shape. All right, here we go. take a look at my icing, and you will see it is way too thick. I mean, it looks like cookie dough almost. It's so thick. So I'm going to add just a little bit more of the water, about another teaspoon or so of water, just to let it thin down a little bit more. Ah, that's better. That's looking much better. It's still pretty thick though, so I'm going to add just a tiny bit more water. Now we're getting there. Okay, that looks really good. And not too thin, not too thick. Okay. So if you look, see how it's holding its shape? It's holding those stiff peaks in there. And yeah, but it's still soft enough that it can go through a piping bag as well. So this is ready. Okay, and so remember that this needs to stay stay airtight. So you want it, don't let it stay out exposed to the air. Just do that as little as possible, because you don't want it to dry out and get that crust at the top of it. Okay, so now we're going to take our nice and stiff royal icing, and we're going to put it into a piping bag, and you know how to do piping bags. So I've got my piping bag here. This one's got a little bit of food coloring on it. That's not good, because I want white. Let me get a nice clean one. There we go, that's better. See how that got a little bit of icing smeared on it. Okay. Or a little bit of color smeared on it. So I'm going to fill up my piping bag. Remember, you don't want to overfill this, because you want to keep control of it. And you don't want it to squirt out the bottom side. Okay, so I'm filling up my piping bag. All right, then squish it down into the bottom and put a clamp on it so that you can keep it closed. A clamp or a rubber band or something like that. Okay. Whoops. Now I already know that this is not going to be enough in this pet bag to do the whole thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and make another bag with the rest of my icing. You can also save out a little bit of your icing and color it whatever color you want. I'm going to color some green. I actually still have some from last time that's green, so I'm just going to use it. Okay. But the rest I'm going to put in my bag, so I've got 2 bags, and I don't have to worry about covering all this up or anything. Okay. I should have pulled out my glass and put my bag in the glass like I showed you to do before. I tried to just do this on my hand, and it's just more difficult this way. Okay. All right, we have 2 piping bags full of white icing. I've got 1 piping bag with green, and we are ready. Okay, let me get a clamp on the end of this one. And then cut off the tip, and don't cut it off too much of that end. You want to keep it kind of a small size there, but you do want to cut off the tip about yay much of the tip. Okay, ooh, that one's a lot. So this is going to be a lot wider, thicker thing of icing. This one I'm going to cut off a little smaller so it's thinner. So then I can choose whichever one I want. If I want a lot of icing at the same time, I'll use the big hole. If I want just a little, I'll use the small one. All right, now it is time to start assembling our gingerbread house. Okay, so let's talk about something here. Right now is when you need to decide, is your gingerbread house going to be something that you eat, or is it just for decorations? Now, I usually, when I make my gingerbread houses, they are just for decoration because I want them to sit there for a while, and nobody wants to eat a cookie that's been sitting out for days or weeks or whatever through the whole Christmas season. But if you want to make it that people can eat it, that's certainly fine too. You can do it either way. It's completely up to you how you want to do that. But it is going to make a difference on how you decorate it, and it's going to make a difference on how you construct it. And that's the big thing. Now, I'm going to go ahead and make mine completely with royal icing. But if you know that you're not going to be eating this thing, and particularly if you have any trouble with getting the structure, the house itself to hold together, here's the little secret. Use hot glue, okay? Use some hot glue and stick the walls together and the roof on it and everything using hot glue rather than using icing. I'm going to show you how to use icing, but sometimes it just does not want to stay together. So just use hot glue if you need to in order to get it to stay together, and then just don't plan on eating it, okay? But the thing with gingerbread houses is that it's supposed to be all edible, so everything can be eaten in it. So whatever decorations you put on it, you're not going to use plastic stuff. Use candy. We're using all kinds of different candies with it to decorate with, okay? So that's just my tip of the week. If you're having trouble getting it together, just use some hot glue instead of trying to use the royal icing. Because our royal icing, remember how it dries hard, and as thick as we've made this, it's going to dry even harder. And so it will work to hold it together, but sometimes it just doesn't want to work there. So just make sure that you're using whatever you want to with it. Just if you're going to use hot glue, just make sure nobody eats it. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at our pieces. All right, here is my gingerbread. There's my gingerbread man. That one got stuck. Uh-oh, he's got a broken leg. I don't know if I'll use him or not, but there's my gingerbread man and the trees. Those are going to be lots of fun to make. And then here, these are the roof pieces. And if you've got any places on the edge of your cookies like this that's a little rough, just knock those off a little bit, okay? To where you've got nice and even sides. If you need to, once you start putting it together, if you see that any of the pieces are kind of uneven, you might need to just use a knife. This is super hard, y'all. It is really hard. And so you might need to use a knife to trim it a little bit just to make it even if it's not going together well, okay? Now here is my pieces that had the sugar in the window, and you can see it didn't work very well. Some of them it melted a little bit, some of them it didn't. I'll have to get creative with these windows. Okay, so you'll remember when we baked our cookies, or baked our gingerbread house, we put some of these sugars, the colored sugars, into the windows and hoping that it would melt and form like glass looking windows. Well, that didn't work. Apparently I either have the wrong kind of sugar to do that with, or the oven wasn't hot enough or something. If I had made the oven any hotter, the gingerbread would have burned, so that would not have been good. So if you'll see here, yeah, it didn't stick at all. So I'm just going to pull all of this sugar out of the middle. I'll just kind of leave. I think it kind of looks cool. Look how it's got little, like the edges of it. Those stuck to the gingerbread, but the rest of it did not stick. So let me pull this out of here. Okay, and I'll just leave that sugar around the edge because I think that looks kind of fun. Okay. And then we'll have these ready. Okay. That would have been a cool idea. If you use the sugar-free candies, that probably would work better than what I tried to use here. I think I just used the wrong kind of sugar. That was the first time I've tried to make it with the sugar windows. So, okay. So now I learned wrong candy to do that with. But okay, so you need something to build your gingerbread house on, and I've just got this is just a wooden cutting board, just a plain wooden cutting board. It could be you could use a piece of cardboard, you could use something else, just something that's hard, that's not going to bend with it. You just want something hard. You can buy a cutting board similar to this at Dollar Tree for $1. Okay, so that might be a good thing to use on that one. But the first thing you're going to do is just make sure that it's big enough. So if I look at this, see, that's going to be plenty big for my thing. Okay, all right, so we're going to start by gluing this together. And to glue it together, you want somehow I've gotten something red on the outside of my piping bag now. That's brilliant. Okay, let me get that off a little bit. Okay. And just run a line of glue right here. And then take your thing of your side. I've got one end piece and one side piece. And glue them together right like that. Okay. Now, I also like to take and put a line of icing on both sides of the wall. And this is going to anchor it to the board. Make sure it's nice and square. Okay. Okay, so that'll anchor it to the board. What's that? Okay. Make sure everything is standing up nice and straight. All right, we're going to do the same thing with the other side, but now you got to do it while it's standing up. Okay, so one line of icing here, and then put it on there. Okay, now this time got to put some icing on both sides. All right, now I'm going to put icing on the end of my side pieces. And again, this is where you need to make sure that it's nice and square, and if you need to trim the piece, just you can use like a vegetable grater or even just a sharp knife. Okay, mine looks pretty square on there. All right, just make sure all the pieces are standing nice and tall and you've got it together pretty well. Now, I'm going to actually not try to put the roof on quite yet, because what I want right now, I want to make sure my board is completely clean, because I ended up with, I don't know how I ended up with red coloring somehow on here. Okay. All right, so I've got icing all around the bottom to hold it in place. Inside and outside, just to make sure that it is held in place well there. Okay. All right, now we're not going to decorate the inside, don't need to do that. Okay, but we've got the basics of the structure together here, but I don't want to try to put the roof on yet until all of this icing has a chance to set up and dry, and make sure that this structure is really, really strong. So don't try to do any more construction on it until it dries a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do right now is we're going to decorate the board. So I'm going to take just more of my icing with the same bag that I was using, and we're going to add snow. Okay, so we've got snow. We want snow all over the board. Okay, so, and you can make it look like you can either use a spatula, or you can pipe it on there and make little swirly designs in the icing. Either way works fine. But let's cover the whole board with snow, 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 snow. You'll see that I knocked the door, or the end of it, off, glue it right back. Maybe I should have put super glue or hot glue on this to keep it together. Okay, here at the front of my thing, I want to do a pathway, just a little winding pathway, and you can use whatever you want here. Chocolate chips might be fun. You know, sometimes you can find the candy that looks like rocks, and so you could put some rocks there to look like a rock pathway. I don't have any of that here right now, so I'm going to use, what should I use? You could use, oh, I know what I could use. How about some cocoa powder? Let's just use a little bit of brown cocoa powder to make a path through the snow. There are no rules here, so you do this exactly like you want to do it. I just want it to look like there's a little path here where somebody has walked through the snow some. So I'm just going to put a little cocoa powder here. That's kind of fun. Ooh, it smells really good too. Okay, so there's my path. All right, now I'm going to take my icing again, and I've got, you want to do whatever you want to do around the around your gingerbread house. You want to do it while this icing is still wet, so it sticks in there. So I'm going to take a little, so these are some pretzels, the pretzel rods that we dipped in chocolate last week. Y'all remember those? Well, now they're going to be logs. Okay, so we've got some little logs over here. Okay, and then we'll add a little bit more icing to hold them together. You could use smaller pretzels if you want to. Remember that the big thing about a gingerbread house is that everything is edible. So you wouldn't want to like put plastic figures in here or something. Everything needs to be that it could be eaten, even if you don't intend on someone eating it. Okay, so there's my little stack of logs, but you know what? It's been snowing, so we better put some snow on top of our logs. Okay. All right, I also have some little sugar pearls, just little white pearls, and I'm gonna just put some of those on top of this. You might want to push them down into the icing a little bit, particularly as this icing is starting to crust. Okay, so I'm gonna put a little icing. I'm gonna put some all over here. Kind of look like just little drops of snow. Okay, so put some over here. And again, just push those down into the icing a little bit. Okay. All right, now I'm going to take my piping bag that has the smaller opening on it, and now I want to go around my windows. So just a nice line of icing around the windows and the door. Okay, now take here. Do that. I have some big gold balls. Let's use the big gold balls. Okay, so if I use these, I can get them in a little easier. Oh, much better. Okay, so I'll use, all right, I have gold and white balls, so I'm going to make nice little pattern here. Those ones are way too small. But I do a golden white pattern. It's like a while. I'll go all the way around. You know, I can't go outside. It's too big. I can't go outside. Your icing is too thin, or it's a whole there, just go back and find your icing. All right, you're getting the idea here, and you can go all the way around all the windows like this if you want to. Completely up to you. You might, if it's too small for your hole, you might get tweezers. That might be a little easier. This is where it gets a little bit tedious. It means it's kind of the same thing over and over, and you might get bored inside. I don't want to do all that. Don't give up. It's going to be awesome, and this is also something that you can work on it a little bit, step away a little bit, work on it a little bit, step away a little bit, whatever you choose to do there. Okay, I'm going to finish up this door. My royal icing. I'm going to start at the top and make a little puddle here, and then I'm going to, while I'm still pushing it out, I'm just coming down a little bit. Don't pull too fast or you will end up breaking it. Okay, but just go around here, and I'm going to come across this way. Yeah, and see, now my windows that were supposed to be that stained glass, they're not stained glass, but they do have the little sticks, like you see the sticks on a window. Oops, I should have done that. Do this from the top to the bottom, not the bottom to the top. Okay, I should have done that from the top, and I started at the bottom. Let me take that one off. Okay, and let's do this again. So you start at the top and just kind of let it dangle, and then stick it to the bottom. Now, once the icing dries on here, on these windows, those little lines across the string work will be hard, but they're still very fragile. So be very careful that you don't bump them because they will break easily. Okay. All right. Yay, it does look so cute, doesn't it? All right, we're getting there. It's looking great. Okay, so now let's take our trees that we made. Be careful, don't bump your, don't bump it. And be sure and decorate all the way around your gingerbread house. So we're decorating more on the front here, but I want you to make sure that you decorate all the way around the sides too. So maybe put another stack of logs in the back, or you can, do something to decorate the back of it. Now this is my gingerbread, and this is oops, I need to show you. Okay. All right, so here's my gingerbread. Remember that we made a whole tree, and then we made 2 half trees. Okay, so I'm putting icing on both sides of the whole tree and then sticking the halves onto it so that we make a 3-dimensional tree. Okay, and then let's make a pile of icing over here on the side. We want a nice pile of icing because we want this to be glued to the board pretty well. Okay, so a pile of icing here, and put our Christmas tree in it. Now you say, okay, that doesn't look like a Christmas tree. That's where the green icing comes in. The green royal icing that we had before. And there we go. All right, so I'm just going to take some of this green royal icing and just kind of blob it on here. But now that this has sat for a little while, this is strong. Okay, the structure of our gingerbread house is pretty strong. So now it's time to add the roof onto the house. Okay, so we're going to do this the same way that we did before. Put some icing on the edges of the end pieces. Okay, good amount of icing there. You want lots of glue because that's what's going to hold this thing together. Again, this is where you could use the hot glue if you prefer. I'm also going to put some on the top of this edge piece. It may not actually touch that, but I'm going to go ahead and put some there. All right, and now make sure it's nice and even. And it goes slightly, let me move so you can see. It goes slightly over the top of the point here. So just slightly over the top. And then I want you to sit here and hold it for a couple of minutes. Just to give it, this thing is heavy. This gingerbread is heavy. And you want to hold that in place for a few minutes while that icing is drying. Okay, so just hold it in place for a couple of minutes before you try to add the other side to it, unless you've got a spare set of hands. So maybe one person can hold this in place and then the other person will put the other side on. Okay. All right, now I see on this piece here, I've got a rough edge up here at the top that's not going to let my roof stand very tall. It's not going to let it stand flat on the edge piece. So I just want to see how it's trying to slide on me? Let me add some icing here. This didn't get much icing there. If you've got any gaps, fill in those gaps. We've already used half of our icing, more than half really, because I went and scraped the bowl too. So add more icing if you see any gaps there. You can also add icing. This is where you can add it from the inside down here at the bottom. Just make sure you got that glued where it's nice and sturdy. Do not want this thing falling apart. Okay. with this. There. Now you can see the advantages of using hot glue to put this together, right? Now this one you're not going to be able to get to the underside of it, so put lots of icing here on the top of the side piece. So lots of glue in there. Okay. All right, and it's time for our other roof piece. Now I can see that this one is trying to slide down some still. Let me push it back up there. Oops, wrong side. Okay. And make sure it's centered front to back as well. Okay. All right, and you want to make sure that it meets at the top. Don't worry, we're going to cover up this gap we've got at the top. We're going to cover that up, so don't worry about that. Okay. But again, hold it in place. Check to make sure if you need to add any more icing, and make sure it's nice and straight front to back as well. Mine's trying to get a little wonky. We can't have it wonky, can we? Here. And now you're going to sit here and hold it for a little bit. Do, 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 do. Okay, for the roof, we're going to do something a little bit different. And this is up to you. You don't have to do this. You can if you want to, but you don't have to. I have some gumdrops, okay? These are our spice drops or gumdrops. I got them in the candy section at Walmart. You could use anything you want for this. Any kind of gummy candy works great for this, but what you're going to do is take it and squish it. You could use a rolling pin here to make them a little bit thinner, but I'm just going to squish it into about a circle shape. It doesn't have to be exact circle. These are a little, these are been sitting in my cabinet for a little bit, so they're kind of dry. But I'm going to do a line of icing right here at the top, and we are going to do shingles out of these spice drops. Okay, so just glue it on there like that. Alternate your colors where you don't have two of the same color right there together. And we're going to make shingles here. You can do whatever you want. You can just put all white icing on it where it looks like it's been snowing. That's fine. Or you can leave it blank and maybe just put icing around the edges. Completely up to you. Whatever you want to do. I'm going to add a little bit more icing. Okay, I showed you two different ways to do the roof. You would usually, pick one and do one style or the other. If I were doing this again, I would have done the little scallops first and then put the candy canes on it, but it's fine for what we got here. Now, you do want to finish out the edges of your roof, and to do that, we are going to put icicles. And of course, you do the icicles just like we did the string work. Just make a little blob there and then let it dangle a little bit. So some of your icicles will be long, some of them will be shorter, and go all the way around your gingerbread house and give it some icicles. All right, one more thing, and I'm just going to do this on the front because I'm running out of icing. I've got my green icing again, and I am going to do some little string work here, just right along here, and we're going to make this look like Christmas tree lights. Okay, so I've got a little string there, and now I'm going to take the little sprinkles that look like Christmas tree lights, and I'm going to add them so it'll look like a string of lights. All right, and there we have our gingerbread house. Isn't it cute? Okay, so here is our final project of our gingerbread house. Isn't it cute? I love it, and I think they're so much fun to make. They're a great family project to do, and so I encourage you and your family to do that. Okay, lots of fun making these. It's a great family project for the whole family to get in on. It's taken me about an hour or so to do this. Now that's from making the icing and decorating it. With baking the cake or baking the gingerbread and everything, that would probably be about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something like that, to do the whole thing. Or you can buy a kit. I will say, if you buy one of the kits, like at Walmart or something, I will say, if you buy, I just got icing all in my hair, didn't I? Okay, if you buy one of the kits like at Walmart, the icing that comes with them is often too thin, and it really doesn't hold together, particularly for building the structure of the gingerbread house. So you'd probably want to make your own icing with that, or just thicken that one up with a little bit more powdered sugar if you do that one. But it's really best to make your own royal icing to make sure that it sticks together very well.